But thank you very much for joining us this morning. Some of you, I'm sure, probably came on our recent webinars where we've covered unconscious bias and also inclusive mental health. Today, we're looking at making learning stick at scale. So unfortunately, our digital director, who was going to be co-hosting with Joe, Paul Westlake, or Westy, can no longer join us due to a personal emergency and a hearing aid appointment he's had to run off and attend. So hopefully I'll be an adequate replacement. Both Joe and myself are co-founders of People Unboxed, a company we set up almost 5 years ago now. And when we did, we set it up with a mission to make a difference. Everything that we do, we always try and make sure it has an impact rather than just doing something as a tick box exercise, if you like. And we specialize in a range of things at People Unboxed. For those who don't know us that well, we offer digital learning solutions, but also instructor-led training as well, both virtual and face-to-face training sessions. And for all of those solutions, we're always focused on how to make the learning stick. So this is a really passionate topic for us, how we can transfer learning back into the workplace and really make it stick. So a while back, I actually shared a blog on LinkedIn about my top tips, my 5 top tips for making learning stick after an instructor-led training course. And in fact, if you want to see that, visit our website. If you're interested in that, you can go onto the resources page on our website and get that. And we actually we try and bring those to life. At the end of every course we deliver, we display those 5 top tips, and we talk through those with our delegates to make sure they understand how to embed their learning after each session. Now, learning at scale with online digital solutions where we don't see people one-on-one, presents some different challenges in terms of how we make that learning stick. And that's what we're going to explore today.
Yes. The world of work is obviously changing at an incredible rate, certainly more so in recent years, accelerated by the pandemic and changes in working patterns that's brought, the VUCA world we live in, and rapid enhancements in technology. And then I guess for L&D teams as well, if we add to this, like the great resignation that we're kind of facing at the moment, and grappling with career development actually being the top reason people leave. And that's been the top reason for 10 years in a row now. So the pressure of what organizations are contending with is all consuming compared to, maybe just a couple of years ago. So L&D and HR functions are kind of being forced to step up and find creative solutions to address these new age challenges. And not only the challenges that we're facing in kind of workforce environments, but also balancing that with the changing needs of our employees. So our employees want to learn, and how they want to learn is different from a couple of years ago. Making learning accessible to everyone, regardless of their learning preferences. And like Tony said, ultimately making that learning stick, right? So that it stands the test of time, and, as organizations, we're getting a return on our investment. So today is about exploring some of these challenges and looking at what we can do about them. So certainly when we're talking to clients, we see some of the same challenges keep coming up time and time again. And for us, the 3 sort of top ones that keep coming up, you can see on the screen there. And these challenges have been around for some time, right? They're not all entirely new, but they're certainly more prevalent now as our work lives are changing. So, for example, appealing to different learning preferences and making learning accessible is much more prevalent now, with sort of the current emphasis on EDIA, keeping learners engaged and with their learning when they're, busier than we've ever been before, right? So some of these challenges aren't new, but they are certainly more and more prevalent in today's world of work. Jump on the chat for me. What kind of challenges are you seeing at the moment? So what are your sort of front of mind? What are your critical challenges that you're seeing in your organization right now in terms of learning? And we'll just get a feel for what's going on in the room. Be interesting to see. Are you seeing the same things, that the same 3 that we've got on the screen there? Making learning stick, appealing to different preferences, keeping people motivated. Maybe it is a time thing. Yeah, being remote and the engagement. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, motivation. So delegates are, people, our employees are telling us they want training, right? But actually, it's tough to get uh, them on board, and allowing them to find that time is not structured in small businesses. Yeah, forgetting within a short period. Absolutely, Joanne. Yeah. Go on, Tony, sorry.
I was going to say a couple of real key ones there, isn't there? I mean, that remote one for starters, as we've changed to, and we've gone backwards and forwards, haven't we, to completely working from home and then hybrid, and how we get that mix right and keep that level of engagement high when people aren't face to face is a massive one. Also, that point that Drew's made there around structure in small businesses, it's very easy to put processes in place in large organizations. It isn't always as easy in a small business to get a systemized approach that makes learning stick in some of the smaller businesses. So absolutely, that's a good one as well.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about making learning stick, let's have a think about that. I'm going to launch a poll actually to just gauge opinion on this one as well. So let me just do that. You'll be able to see that in front of you now. So think about the last course you attended. Can you remember the name of the last course? Simple yes or no. Can you remember the name of the last course you attended, whether that was virtual, face-to-face? What was the last course you attended? And then the second question there, can you list the 3 learning outcomes that you took away? So probably slightly more tricky. And be honest. There's no right or wrong answers. It's fine. We know that these are some of the challenges we see. And then the third one there, would you be able to share the 3 tangible behaviours you've changed as a result? So, that might be on a scale, I guess, anywhere really. But yes, you've kept all the commitments and you've really done something about it, or really not sure I have, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle there. Just give you another kind of 30 seconds to answer those. So yeah, thinking of our own experiences. Are we really making changes? Are we really remembering the content that we're learning? So I'm just going to end that there and share the results with you. And yeah, just as expected, most of us can remember the name of the last course we attended, right? Can you list the 3 learning objectives that you took away, or outcomes that you took away? Kind of 50-50 there, pretty much. But most of us just slightly tipping onto the yes. So yeah, we can remember what we learned, what were the key outcomes. But actually, when it gets to, have we made a difference? Have we really taken those behaviours and outcomes back to the workplace, changed something in the way that we work, changed our behaviours? Is there something tangible that we can see as a result of that? And actually, yeah, the majority of us saying no, or somewhere in the middle. So absolutely, in ourselves, we can see that same challenge as well. Nothing too surprising there. That's kind of what I expected, and I know from my own experience as well. And it's a relatable problem, right? So there was some research done by the Harvard Business Review that said only 12% of employees apply new skills learned in their courses to their jobs. So only 12% of people that are attending potentially the courses that we're running as L&D people, only 12% is actually getting back to the workplace and making a tangible difference. Let's think of it a slightly different way. How many of you have got a favourite book, right? And if you have, just think about that book in your head. If I asked you to repeat for me word for word, every single word in one page of that book, could you do it? Chances are probably not. I know I certainly couldn't. But if I ask you another thing, how many of you got a favourite song? Maybe that's one you sing all the time. Maybe it's one of those annoying songs that get stuck in your head for weeks on end. That tends to be songs that the kids are singing for me. Now, if I asked you to repeat for me word for word that song, could you do it? Now, you're more likely to be able to, right? There's a good chance that you would remember so much more of the words of the song than the page of the book. Now, a song has about 280 words. A page of a book has about 280 words, roughly. So why is it that we can repeat a song, but we can't repeat all the words in that book? And the answer is very simple. It's repetition, right? We might have read that book several times, but how many times have we sung that song? And if it's a song from our younger years, or one of those songs, like I said, that gets stuck in our head for weeks on end, then the chances are even more likely. And there's also a piece around the rhythm of songs, making it easier to remember. Those of us that are at an age where we used to repeat our times tables over and over and over again, we used to kind of do it with a bit of a rhythm, bit of a song, and that helps things stick in our minds. So the challenge we've got, or one of the first challenges we called out there, is this forgetting challenge. So, and we can blame biology for this. We, as humans, it's essential for our survival to conserve energy. That's allowed us to be efficient in searching for food and shelter, competing for sexual partners, avoiding predators. And as a result, our brains quickly forget what we don't use regularly. All right, if our brains deem it not as important, then they, we simply don't see the need to remember that information. It's all about survival. There was a German psychologist called Hermann Ebbinghaus, and he was one of the first people to look into this forgetting challenge. And he pioneered investigations into memory back in 1885. So this is really kind of grounded science from a long time ago. And he conducted a series of memory experiments on himself, and he tried to memorize lists of meaningless syllables. And then he tested himself periodically to see how many he remembered. And the result of his experiments was his forgetting curve, which you can see on the screen here. So he found that our memory eroded very, very quickly at first. Now, critically, what he also realized and found is that as he repeated information, as he repeated those syllables and those times tables back in the day of us being at school, memory actually starts to stick for longer. So we can slow down that forgetting curve. And this is a basis for something called spaced repetition learning, which is repeating information at set intervals over time. And that allows us to overcome the forgetting curve, just like we saw in our song example. So spaced repetition helps to embed knowledge and learning transfer.
Yeah, so we had the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, and as Joe said, that repetition piece started to slow down that erosion of knowledge retention. Leitner took it a step further in the 1970s. So as well as the repetition part, Leitner added something that helped to personalize the learning and kind of target specific knowledge gaps. So he used a number of boxes and put flashcards in those boxes, and sort of reviewed those flashcards to test himself on those questions to see if he already knew the answers. And for every flashcard that he knew the answer to, he moved it into one box, moved it forward a box. And in every flashcard he got wrong, he moved it back a box, essentially. So he's repositioning these cards based on his own knowledge. And there are a couple of different ways that then he tested that. You can see on the screen here of some examples where box one, he was practicing every day, reviewing the flashcards in that box every day, whereas box 5 was only once a month. There were some similar sort of systems where the box sizes were actually different, and he only reviewed the boxes when they filled up. So the ones that filled up quicker, i.e. the cards he didn't know the answer to, got reviewed more often, and the things he did know got reviewed less often. So there's this idea of repeating information, yes, but at different intervals based on your own knowledge gaps. And that's essentially what sort of modern spaced repetition is all about. It's targeting those knowledge gaps and repeating the things you don't know very well more often than the things you do. Now, of course, being in the 21st century, we don't need shoe boxes or whatever it was like he was using back then. We've got technology that can do that for us. So algorithms that can look at our knowledge gaps and target those areas by repeating content for us in a way that closes our own knowledge gaps and makes every sort of learning journey personalized. So you might have experienced this in other apps. We've had a spaced repetition app before that really proved the impact of this, had a 33% knowledge increase, retention increase. And so we've kind of backed up that principle there that science has demonstrated. But I'm interested, has anyone else ever used anything similar? So Duolingo is an example of this. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to learn a language on Duolingo. I know I use it. And these apps help to personalize and embed learning by targeting those knowledge gaps using spaced repetition. Now, it might not be spaced repetition, but who's used an app like Duolingo or something that helps to personalize and embed your learning? You can see the poll question there. Who is it has anyone used those apps before? Because they are, they're pretty present in a lot of society nowadays, in lots of areas. Traditionally, it was used more for sort of medical students trying to learn the content, and more recently, it's been very popular in language learning. But it doesn't always make it to the corporate world. There's very, very few examples in the corporate world. So Joe's going to reveal. So we've got a few examples, and feel free to share your experiences in the chat. Did it work for you? Has it helped you at all? If you haven't, then maybe explore those things. This stuff does exist out there, but as I said, it's not that common in corporate. Thanks, Joe. You can remove that now. It's not quite as common in the corporate world, but that is something we can certainly look at. So if you want to move on, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, so that's our first learning challenge is that we forget, and that's one of the things we can do is to make it stick. We need to do things more than once, as we've demonstrated. So we need to have that repetition piece, whether it's spaced repetition or something similar. There's lots of solutions out there nowadays. So there's things like nudge learning that remind us to do learning. There's targeted revision, where we take an assessment and then it only presents content to us that is relevant to our own knowledge gaps. And then what I think is called a combination of both of those is spaced repetition, where we identify those knowledge gaps, target them, which makes it personalized to the learner, rather than that traditional learning where everyone goes through the same learning experience, even though we've got different knowledge in those areas. So that's our first challenge. Our second one is around learning preferences. And let's just look at an example for this. So let's say we had to change the filter on our Dyson or Shark vacuum cleaner. How many of us know how to do that? It's probably something that we haven't done for a while, probably haven't done it in a year or so, and maybe that we don't remember exactly how to do it. So how would we find out, right? So some of us might grab the instruction manual if we've still got it. I know I don't keep mine, but grab the instruction manual and read up, or go on the website and read that product information. Some of us might go onto YouTube, watch a video and see what that's all about, and learn from that. We might call a friend who's going to explain it over the phone to us. Or you know what, we might just give it a go. We might just get our hands dirty and see if we can figure it out. So, none of us look, we all differ in the way we like to do things and learn things. Everyone's unique and experiences the world differently. So it's not surprising that we all learn in different ways too. And catering for each individual learning preference is really crucial. It might sound like a big task, but actually, if we can target these 4 key areas, then that can go a long way to helping the way people learn. So for our visual learners, it might be putting more images, animations, videos, presenting information graphically, maybe using charts. All this sort of stuff is going to help them retain the information. For people that are auditory learners and like to hear things, well, it might be good to include voiceovers or podcasts maybe that they can listen to. For learners that like to read and write, well, obviously we can provide articles, books, reports, things at blogs, anything like that they can read can go a long way. And kinesthetic learners who like to try things out, actually that's the most challenging one when it comes to online learning, obviously, because it's we're asking them to physically do things. Obviously, we can tackle some of that in just contextualizing our learning and helping them understand how to apply it. But actually setting them little goals, go away and complete this and come back tomorrow and reflect on how you did it. So, which is only possible when we do bite-sized pieces and they're asked to return the next day, rather than, right, you finished the course, go away now, and not come back and reflect on it. So kinesthetic is allowing them a chance to try things out. So I'm interested, what's your preference? You can, and of course, we don't all just have one, so you can tick more of these boxes if you like. But what are the key ones for you? What are your own learning preferences? While you're filling that, and I can see that Carl said Duolingo. Okay. What language are you learning, Carl? I'm still at the moment learning Norwegian, and it's really helping me. I when I visit my friends in Norway now, I'm certainly picking up on a lot more of their conversations, whether they know it or not. But yeah, what are you learning? Japanese. Oh wow, Japanese.
Oh my
French. I mean, I was in French on there for a while as well, actually, but I paused it for Norwegian. But fair play. Japanese, that's a challenging one.
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like a lot of visual learners. So I'm a visual and kinesthetic learner personally. So yeah, visual, kinesthetic, reading. But you can see here what a mix we've got, and the danger of if we only target one of those preferences, how we can lose engagement with people and really not get the most out of their learning experience. So it's important we bear all of those in mind when we're designing our learning. And you know, that's why we have this. The idea is we have this blend of learning experiences, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of blended learning before. We all know it's really important, but how well do we really do this? And if you think back to the questions that Joe asked you at the start of today about what was the course you last attended, and did you apply the learning afterwards? Well, we know the best thing we can do is to start taking ownership and putting it into practice. But do we always do it? We don't always do it. And quite often we think that 10%, that just attending a course is enough to upskill ourselves or upskill someone that we're sending on a course, right? If we're looking after our teams, if we're L&D and we're putting courses in place, or if we're a manager sending someone on a course, we often have this mindset where, well, I've sent them on some training, they should know what they're doing. And of course that isn't the case, because we need that blend of experiences that really help. And that's where that 20% learning from others, and you can see on the screen the examples there, that 10% is the formal learning with structured training and interventions and things like that. The 20% learning from each other, coaching, feedback, one-to-ones, and the 70% actually trying things out, taking ownership of new experiences, managing projects, managing tasks, and just taking time to practice and reflect on that is where the majority of learning is done. 70% of it is done in that way. So with the 10%, as I said, we often fall into the trap of focusing on that. And if we think about when we're sending people on a course and how much we transfer the learning after that training, there's a number of people that have a role in making sure that learning is transferred. So there's the trainee themselves at the bottom of the screen there, the person who attends the course. There's the trainer, if we're talking about instructor-led training now, the trainer who has a role. And we have the manager, the person who sends them on that course or authorizes that course or whatever you want to say, but their manager, their line manager. And there's a book written by Dr. Mary Broad and John Newstrom that looked into a detailed study of this, looking at actually who has the greatest impact on whether or not the learning from a course is transferred back to the workplace and applied. So they looked at each of these three roles, the manager, trainee, trainer, and trainee, and they also looked at when. So before a course, during a course, or after a course. So each person has a role at each stage of that journey. So what do you think? Who do you think had the greatest impact and when? So you can choose, we're going to let you choose three here, your top three. Who do you think had the greatest impact and when? So you might say the manager for all three, or you might say, oh, the manager afterwards, the trainer during, the trainee before, whatever you want, mix them up. But which three do you think had the greatest impact on the training being transferred back to the workplace? Based on that study. So have your three votes. It's all anonymous, otherwise I'll give you a prize if you got it right.
Yeah.
So Joe, you can see the numbers of how many voted. I can't. So
Yeah, it looks like it's stabilized.
Okay. Well, let's see the votes then.
So let's send it there and see what we're saying.
So many saying trainer during and manager after. Okay. And trainee after. Okay, so they're the three big hitters. Okay. And do you know what? Before we reveal, I will say that all of them have a reasonable impact. And actually, the only one everyone's saying 0 to is trainer after. And you're right, that is a low one. So Joe, if you want to reveal the answers there, we'll go to the poll and reveal the answers. What they found, and Joe's going to pop up on the screen, there we go, was actually the manager had a huge impact, both before and after. then the trainer before, and the trainee, don't get put off by the fact that training numbers are low. They're still or lower. They are still really important, obviously, and we have to take this as a pinch of salt. They looked at a large audience. I'm sure there are going to be more self-starting people where the trainee just takes it all on their shoulders and runs with it. But what they found across this broad study was that who had the greatest impact was the manager. So our attempts to build around just a formal piece of learning and tie it into other parts of learning, i.e. that blend, is what's really important. So if you think about what a manager needs to do before a session, well, they need to outline, why are you attending this course? Why is it important to your role? What particular parts of the course are going to be really relevant to you? What am I expecting you to take away from that course? And how are you going to use it afterwards? Because if someone sends me on a course and I know I'm going to be responsible for applying that later on, well, you can be pretty sure I'm going to pay attention to it and really make sure I understand in the course. Before I leave, I'm going to make sure the trainer's explained to me anything I'm not sure about on how to apply it. So that before conversation is really important. Then the after one, of course, is really important as well, because we need to follow up on that. We then say, right, well, actually, yes, what did you learn? How was the experience? What questions have you got? Here's your responsibility. Here's what I want you to use it for. You know, all that afterwards piece is really crucial. Of course, during the course, their only job is for the manager is to leave that person alone and not interfere. You all said trainer afterwards is very low, as you can see. I know a lot of you said trainer during. Of course, a trainer would have a lot of impact during, but really, where a lot of the work is done is way before the trainer turns up to that classroom. I know you might not believe it about us trainers, but we do put a bit of effort in before and learn our content and how we're going to facilitate a session. So a lot of the work is done before, and then the trainee obviously it has to build on the environment the manager and trainer has set up. But what I guess I wanted to the reason we put this in here was just to sort of land that message that sometimes we lean on that 10% a bit too much, and we expect, oh, we've sent them on that course and they should be fine. Actually, it's how we put it as part of that blend. It's the 70%, it's the 20% conversations we have with them before and afterwards, where we're helping them understand the context of it. And it's the 70% of applying it, i.e. setting it up. This is what you're going to own and how you're going to get a chance to practice it. That's the bit that helps the 10%. And without that, it kind of falls down. So helping in terms of making learning stick, that 70 and the 20 are absolutely crucial. And that's why they're the bigger numbers, right? And one thing we've got that can help us with that is blended development plans. So personal development plans that are blended. And this can be as simple as anything. And when we teach our performance development sessions, the amount of people that don't use personal development plans is staggering. And one of the biggest fears is the amount of effort involved. And that's why we just thought, I'm just going to put this on the slide and just show you just how simple this needs to be. And this is what we share in our face-to-face classes as well, is development goal. Set your personal development goals about what's going to help you achieve your business goals or what is going to help your career development. So what is it you're going to achieve? And you pop them in the top. And then think about 10, 20, 70. And that's what we don't always do. We don't have those conversations around, yes, there might be a course we attend, but who else can I learn from, and who am I going to have coaching and reflection conversations with? And what am I going to own? How am I going to practice this? The example I always give is Microsoft Excel pivot tables. I don't know why I always go to that one, but the amount of times I've learned how to do pivot tables online only to forget a week later because I don't use it afterwards. Whereas if I took on a project around pivot tables for a couple of weeks, it'd probably stick and I'd never need to do that again. So it's putting the 70% in to allow a chance to practice and make it embed and stick. So that's one of the things that I would say is really important, is have a simple development plan and having the conversation around how you can use the 10, 20 and 70 to make it stick. So I'm interested, who's got a personal development plan and who makes their team use them? I guess that's important as well. And is it in a 10, 20, 70 format? Are you considering more than just formal training when you talk about developing yourself or others? Is it just, I'm going to go on this course? Or are you thinking, who can you learn from? And more importantly, how are you going to practice it? How are you going to embed it? And how are you going to reflect on what you've learned? So yeah, do you have a plan that's 10, 20, 70 and it's alive and updated all the time in conversations? Do you not have one at all? Or do you have a plan, but maybe it's not blended, or maybe you just don't review it very regularly? So let's see the numbers once we're ready. Okay, so exactly like passing courses, I said, a lot of us don't have plans or don't ask our team members to. So then our only learning becomes those formal interventions, but unplanned, sort of off the cuff. Or we've got those plans, but we're not doing it in a way that we know is really effective. So this is a big one. You can close that. Thanks, Joe. This is a big one for us in terms of that second learning challenge is, we said that it's about different learner preferences. And that's where that blend is so important. It's really important in a few ways. We need to make sure that, if we think back to what we said at the start of this, we need the content that supports those different preferences. So that variety of media and interactions that supports those VARC learners, some visual, auditory, reading and kinesthetic elements to any training intervention to make sure we're getting the most for everyone. Secondly, we need a blended experience. So as well as the different interactions, we should think about how we build in those 20 and 70% guidance things in a course. So we should design training or processes that allow a blended experience. And thirdly, development plans should support it. So as an organization, we should be providing tools like the blended development plan template, as simple as that, but also a culture where we focus on the 70%. And that's what we really want to drive.
Yeah, interesting. So moving on to onto the next challenge. So this one was around how do we keep our learners motivated, engaged, and lots of you on the chat earlier were kind of relating to this one as well. There was a recent LinkedIn learning survey of over 4,000 professionals, and it revealed that 94% of employees would stay at a company longer if it invested in their career more. Which inherently we know, right? We know we need to invest in people's careers, and we know that that's a retention factor. But what it's showing us is that people want to learn, right? They prioritize it. There was another study as well, actually, that showed it was a number one thing that people wanted in their workplace. So people want to learn. Yet, actually, the number one reason why employees feel held back from learning is simply time, right? They don't have the time. And there was a research study done by Deloitte that shows today's employees have just 1% of their typical working week to focus on their own training and development. And actually, when they added that up, that ended up totaling around 24 minutes a week on average. All right. So very, very small amount of time that we have to put towards our training and development. So the modern learner, right, we know this, has lots and lots of competing challenges, and we are time poor. So if we think about this in our own lives, who here thinks they don't have time to watch a 2-hour movie? I know I don't. I get put off by finding an evening where I can watch a movie. I watch very few movies, and Tony takes the mickey out of me constantly because I just have no movie repertoire at all. But if we put on a series and end up watching series episodes, before we know it, we've watched kind of 3, 4, even more episodes of that series. And that's because our brains prefer bite-sized content, right? It feels so much more manageable. The other thing that's going on here is it's the series example is appealing to our reward mechanisms. So there's little rewards at the end of each episode. We get the kind of climax at the end. We get that little dopamine hit. And we're in control of it more, right? We can stop, we can start, we can pause. We know how far through we are. We can choose to carry on and watch another episode, or we can pause where we are. We didn't need to invest 2 hours up front, which of course feels insurmountable in today's lives, right? And it's no different with learning. There was a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, and he looked at kind of life goals around, let me just flick that on one, sorry. He looked at life goals around things like losing, 2 stone in weight, or giving up smoking, right? Real chunky kind of life goals. And how many of us have set ourselves a goal like this, right? We're not too far into the year. We've probably set ourselves a New Year's resolution. It might be something significant like that. And the problem here again is that it feels insurmountable. 2 stone is a really long-term target, or even a stone is a long-term target. And nothing I do today is going to make that happen overnight, right? So often we give up because it feels impossible, right? Or imagine we've got a big task at work to complete, and it just feels overwhelming. We've all been there, right, as well. We know we've got to do it, but we're not really sure how to start. We don't quite know how to get to the end goal. So we put it off, we procrastinate, and push it to one side for as long as possible. We find it hard to eat that frog, for those of you that have heard that term phrase before. But if we set ourselves a small challenge daily, so maybe for a weight loss goal, that's a step target each day, for example, then it becomes digestible, number one, so small steps. But it also means that we're instantly gratified for our accomplishments, right? We know we've achieved that little step for today, or we've closed our rings, or got a medal on our smartwatches, whatever it is. And thinking of instant gratification, it might sound silly, right? But how many of us have written a to-do list at the end of our day just to tick off the things that we've already done that day? All right, I know I do that because it gives us that sense of accomplishment. So what we know is that large goals, large tasks feel impossible. Small digestible steps feel better, and they also play to our reward mechanisms. They're giving us those little wins along the way. So taking this back to learning content, we need to avoid this kind of cognitive overload, right? We don't have, and again, research shows we don't have the brain capacity for lots of information being given to us at once. We can only remember around about 5, how do we know? Yes, David. We can only remember around 5 to 7 new pieces of information at once, all right? Any more than that, and we're simply overflowing our glass. Now, we can see, right, learning trends are kind of moving in this direction. So, and largely that was driven by COVID, when we had to go virtual. And of course, no one's going to sit in a virtual classroom for a whole day. So that forced us to think about micro content and short sessions. And these trends have stuck with good reason. So the third challenge that we're looking at and that we see a lot of is staying motivated. How do we keep our learners motivated and engaged? Well, we can't climb mountains in one go. We need digestible chunks, and those little wins along the way, those little dopamine hits, are super important. So what can we do about it? Well, shorter courses, as we've said, that allows us to maintain our concentration. It feels a little bit more digestible. But also, I guess for us as L&D professionals, prioritizing the content, right? As I said, we can only remember 5 to 7 pieces of information in one go. And as learning designers, we're the gatekeepers of content, right? So we might find ourselves in a situation where we have to challenge a little bit. We have to challenge the content that's being requested and push back a little bit. If it's, if too much is being asked, let's prioritize exactly what the learning focuses are. No more than kind of 3 things that we want learners to take away. And that way we're going to get the impact that we want from that learning.
So to recap, I guess, on the three challenges we started with, and the 3 actions, if you like, that we would suggest you take for each of those. So the first one being that we forget things. And for that, we talked about the tech that's out there that personalizes learning, that targets knowledge gaps, and that embeds learning content. For different learner preferences, we talked about having a variety of interactions, designing learning programs around blended learning, 70-20-10, and also really having development plans that are focused specifically on the 70% bringing it to life piece. And then for staying motivated, we talked about bite-sized learning, prioritizing content, and rewarding those little wins along the way. So these are the things that we would recommend for those three challenges. And hopefully there's been a few things along here so far that you have found really useful. What we're planning on doing for the last 15 minutes session is taking you through what we've designed to solve that. And I talked earlier on about the 5 top tips for our instructor-led training, because it is so important that we are making a difference and people can embed that learning and make it stick. But we wanted the same for our online digital solutions as well, and that's why we've created something for that. So just to give you a heads up, this is the sales pitch of the part of the session. So if you've got what you need and you don't want to see the product that we're going to take you through, then we won't be offended if you do want to jump off now. But if there are any questions about what we've covered so far, please fire them off in the chat and we'll answer them as we go through. But for the last 15 minutes, we're just going to take you through the product that we have designed, and that is BentoBot. And this is a micro learning app designed to solve those three problems that we've just been talking about, and something we've been working on for the last few years. So it tackles those three problems. It uses spaced repetition learning to target those knowledge gaps and make the learning stick, embed the learning using a clever algorithm that learns what you know and targets and repeats content for you to close your own knowledge gaps and make your learning journey personal. It has multimodal content interactions to target those learning preferences, and it has bite-sized content and gamification elements to reward psychology to keep people motivated. So they're the three things we're trying to solve. So the way that does that, the solution that we've got is like I said, it's a micro learning app. So it has learning content that's pushed out to different learner groups, or learners can select what they want to do. So a range of courses. There are then daily activities. So Joe mentioned earlier on, so just seeing Carl's comment about Japanese lunchbox. Yes, exactly that. The bento, good shout, I should have said that. The word is all around bite-sized content. So it's around bite-sized food, and the principle's the same with this bite-sized learning content. So yes, with the way that would work is we have bite-sized content. Joe talked earlier on about us only having 1% of our time available, and that equating to 24 minutes a week according to HBR. And that 24 minutes a week, if you think about it, it's 5 minutes a day. And that's exactly the principle behind this app, is that on average, it's about 5 minutes learning a day. So rather than asking people to sit down and do an hour's piece of e-learning in one visit, which it seems scary and daunting, and how much will you really remember? It's bite-sized pieces every day. It's a course broken into smaller chunks with lots of different interactions to keep people excited and engaged. Quite often talk about it being like an advent calendar at Christmas, like the excitement of opening up the window and not knowing what you're going to get today. What kind of content is it today? Is it a video? Is it something to read? Is it something to do? It's that sort of principle. And then the workouts and quizzes are the bits that make it really fun. There's a self-assessed quiz that uses spaced repetition, and you can see that there in the larger image. So a question is put forward, the learner self-assesses and says, yes, I knew that, or no, I didn't. So if you think back to those flashcards I talked about with Leitner earlier, that's us moving those into those different size boxes. So not only are we learning the content by doing the quiz, BentoBot is learning what we know and what we don't know, and then deciding what questions to present to us the next time we log in. So it's making it more likely that we get the questions we don't know again, and less likely that we get the ones we do know. They don't go away completely, but it just reduces the chance. So we're seeing the ones we don't know more often, helping it close knowledge gaps and combat that forgetting curve. And then we've got that instant gratification, those little wins and coins and avatar upgrades and things like that, that help people be motivated, those leaderboards and things like that, make people want to go back on there. So basically the first problem is being solved with that spaced repetition that targets knowledge gaps. So that's our first problem. The second one we talked about earlier on was that learner preference idea, and that's where we've got this multimodal, lots of variety of content options within the app, everything that you would expect in a normal e-learning tool and more, but on a bite-sized principle, and it's bringing those VARC learning preferences to life. So Joe will flick through these very briefly, but so the first one, flip cards, kind of thing you'd see on a standard e-learning tool. You know, you've got a definition, you flip it over, you can read to learn more about it. The next one is ordering, so dragging things into a correct sequence to learn to define what's priority or to put something in an order. We've got sorting, where you drag things into relevant buckets or swipe left and right. We've got dialogue trees, or what we call branching conversations, where these ones are really powerful. So this, in terms of that kinesthetic learning and applying things, this puts people in scenarios. So it's like, this is the situation, and here's some options. What do you want to do? So you choose that option, and then depending on how you respond, you'll get a different set of a different journey, if you like, a different experience, and then you need to respond to that one. So this allows people to learn by consequence. If I do this, this is the result, and then I'm in a new situation. How do I respond? Rather than, if you think about traditional multiple choice testing or anything like that, if we answer in that way, once it's either right or wrong, that's it. Whereas this, we can dive deeper into an experience. The example we're given the other day is like fire safety. I mean, we use it a lot for conversation, so a lot of soft skills. But the one we were talking about the other day was fire safety. Normally, it'd be like, which fire extinguisher would you use in this situation? And if I pick the wrong one, it just say, no, that's wrong, choose again. Well, in real life, you don't get to choose again. You might have made the situation worse. So now what would you do in this situation? So you're kind of building out this all these different possible avenues. It's kind of like those choose your own ending books that, for people that are old enough like me to remember those. Those sorts of experiences. But it helps us learn, and people like to deliberately choose the wrong one to see what will happen, and that's great because they can learn in a safe environment. So yeah, dialogue trees are in their conversations, branching conversations. Self-assessments, where people can become more self-aware, and this one's around team development, so it's about awareness of the team, but a lot of them around learning your own communication style, or learning your own emotional intelligence areas to focus on, or even it could be more of a health check in terms of the organization itself. So it could be, you've just done a GDPR course, actually now self-assess how well are you applying that stuff in your organization, and you're getting results and areas to work on. And then we've got 3D Explore, so we can look at objects, rotate them around, learn about different parts of pieces of equipment. And similarly to that, we've got 360 Hotspot, where we can navigate around a room or an area and either bring up information in those areas, or let them click and identify danger zones or hotspots and things like that. So really sort of immersive, interactive experiences. And then finally, the Explainer, which is simple text and images or a video to bring it to life. And that could be a YouTube or TED Talk video, but equally it could be a short recording that we've done or you've done. Because we know from our classroom experiences that just some things are better in a classroom atmosphere than they are as an online experience. So we try to make it the best of both worlds and have brief 5-minute sort of classroom experiences along the way as well on the topics that really work in that way. And so that's kind of how all the different range of content we've got, and that gives us as much as we can online anyway, a real sort of blended experience, and tackling those different learner styles and really making it engaging. And then the third problem around keeping people motivated and wanting to keep doing it and engaged, we've just got a few gamification elements that sort of, the bite-sized piece, as we said earlier, is going to keep people motivated and engaged anyway, because they haven't got this hour-long course to do. They've got just 5 minutes to do today, just one small component to do. Easy, 5 minutes, do it on the way to work, in my break, while I'm on the shop floor, but things are quiet, at my desk or whatever. But just 5 minutes a day is going to keep people motivated anyway. But the extra bits is the gamification. So we're giving them points along the way, coins along the way, which they can exchange for avatar pieces. We've got this learner passport where as people are completing things, they're literally stamping things in their own passport, and there's other ways to gain bonus stamps and things like that. But also we're getting them to write down their commitments, and they can review these at any point so that they can revisit them. It's all in one place. We've got this passport of all our learning completions, and I can see all of my commitments that I've made so that we don't forget them, like we looked at the start of today. We remember what we committed to doing, and our busy lives get in the way, but they're still right in front of us, and we can revisit when we want. And then leaderboards, which we know drives engagement, and everyone, when we talk to people, everyone always says, oh, my team's really competitive. And the reason everyone says it is because most of us are, not everyone, but there's a lot of competition in a lot of environments, and it drives people back to the app. From our experience, it sends people back there. And it becomes a fun experience, and they actually want to learn rather than seeing it as a chore. So that's kind of the three the way we solve those 3 problems, and we tackle that, forgetting what we've learned, different learning preferences, and keeping people motivated through the different elements of the app.
Yeah, I can see a couple of questions on the chat, which we'll just pause for a second and go to, Tony, if that's okay.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So as an
sorry.
L&D organisation, how do you influence and support the manager post-course? Yeah, so what we tend to do, Carly, I mean, we do a lot before, because we know that the before bit is so important. We tend to do, when we do a learning program, we will do a kickoff call with the delegates, but we'll also do a separate one with the line managers to talk them through how they can support the learners throughout that process. So we tend to do it free, because we want to do it, we want them to do it throughout the whole journey, not just at the end of the course, because we said earlier that pre is actually the number 1. So we do it pre, and then we're around for post if they want to speak to us. We also provide post-course workbooks that give people guidance on how to apply that learning. We also give tips on coaching. So we always suggest coaching. We offer it as an optional add-on to every program we do that we can offer, but we always sort of really strongly advise that if they don't take us up on that they have either a coaching offering internally, or at the very least, they buddy up employees, delegates on the course, to at least challenge each other and keep each other honest. So there's a number of ways we do it, but certainly we have that in that kickoff call. We spend time telling them how they can support. And of course, we also use surveys straight after the course and further down the line to check in on, are we making a difference, and look at KPIs as well. So there's a number of things we do to try and drive that post-course influence, if you like. So hopefully that answered that question, but Carly, tell me if not. And then second one, is BentoBot a post-course tool or course replacement? The answer is either. I mean, we see it as it absolutely is. It can be a replacement tool, because in an ideal world, we move to this bite-sized approach, which suits all learners or most learners. There might be certain courses where you don't want them to do it over a period of months, and you want them to do it all in one sitting. And I don't know, maybe there's a pre-onboarding module that you want to do in one go. I don't know. I still would say it's better over a longer period of time, where it's bite-sized and it's sticking, but you might not have time to do that. So we can do it as both. You could have existing e-learning. That BentoBot works with any existing LMS. It's not a tool. It's a web app. So it can be a link in an existing LMS. So they could complete a course, link through, single sign-on, link through to BentoBot, do the embedding part of it, come back to their LMS and help make it stick. So either or is the answer to that, Carly. It can be a full solution, or it can be an embedding part of an existing process for people who don't want to rewrite their existing courses. But it's a tool that isn't. It's not something where someone has to implement a whole system. It's just a web app that people can link through and work with any existing LMS.
Yeah, plug into your existing learning ecosystem. So as Tony's described, we've kind of solved these challenges, I guess, for our learners. But let's not forget about L&D and the organisation as well. So for our learning and development teams, the app comes with a range of off-the-shelf content, compliance, soft skills, leadership topics, all that kind of good stuff. But we know L&D teams also want the ability to be able to create and amend courses without additional cost, right? They want to be able to do it in-house. So BentoBot comes with a super simple, and when I say super simple, I can do it, and I am not an e-learning designer by any stretch. Super simple, zero code authoring tool. So without any technical expertise, you can create content from scratch. You can curate content. So you might take some of the off-the-shelf content that's already in there, swap bits out or move bits around. Or you can launch the off-the-shelf content as it is. So, and that's true even for some of the more advanced interactions that Tony talked about. So the branching conversations, the self-assessments, which in traditional e-learning authoring tools can become very complex, as I'm sure you're aware. So even I can do it. And Westy, who is our digital designer, digital director, sorry, is getting quite upset because I no longer need to go to him to make those requests anymore. I can do it myself. And the off-the-shelf content has learning pathways preloaded into it. So the general kind of concept is that people follow the same principles. So there's kind of pure learning for at least week 1, maybe a couple of weeks, depending on the content. And then the workouts that Tony was talking about, the quizzes, the workouts start embedding that knowledge from kind of week 2 to 3 onwards, whilst they continue learning at the same time, right? So before we get a chance to forget anything we've learned already, we start embedding that knowledge alongside continuous learning. And then we have a quiz at the end of every week to test where their knowledge is, all right? And then for the organisation, what do the organisation want? Well, they want to be able to see proof of their return on investment, right? So what we have is all the insights you would expect to see, and that can be either in the BentoBot dashboard that you can see here, or it can track back through your LMS. So Tony talked about being integrating into your current ecosystems. You can do single sign-on through your LMS. So if that's the case, you can, all of this information can track back. And you can get things like, the obvious stuff, active users, assigned courses, how many days average learning streak are people clocking up, the amount of time they're spending, the engagement, and also their quiz performance. So looking at, how well are people, how much do people know? And we can correlate that with how many workouts and how much learning they're doing, right? So are they keeping on track with all their learning? Are they doing their workouts regularly? And is it impacting their overall knowledge in those quizzes? And you can also break it down by course, so you can use it as part of your training needs analysis to really kind of dissect into what your training and learning opportunities are by course, by questions, by topic, etc. So we've solved it for the learner, the L&D teams, and the organisation. So it's good for everyone.
So yeah, that really wraps it up for us. So we've taken you through sort of some things you can do at scale that are going to help your learning stick around those 3 big challenges, and also taking you through our solution in terms of the app. If you want to speak any more, we'll stick around for any questions. But there's also pop by the website, give us a call, drop us an email, whatever you want to do. Follow us using the QR code on the screen. If you want to download that top tips document I said about, it's on our resources page. And also you can see that Scan Me is as a link to the demo for BentoBot if you're interested in that as well. So you can have a play on there. So thank you very much for joining us today. We'll stick around if there's any final questions, but otherwise have a fantastic day.